A young boy sat upon a small mound of earth beside an old wooden building. Beyond him stretched a narrow path that wound through rows of houses and fields. From his perch, he gazed at the distance with a contented smile. Tilting his head toward the sky, he admired the boundless blue expanse above and quietly thought how peaceful everything seemed. After a while, he lowered himself to the grass near the tree. His name was Ren. With a slow, unhurried motion, he stretched both arms upward and released a wide yawn. The movement carried the lazy grace of someone utterly at ease. He lay back, hands folded behind his head, his expression serene. Then, without warning, they widened slightly. His pupils sharpened, fixed on a distant memory, and his face turned blank, comically so, as if caught between thought and disbelief. He saw himself as a weary office worker, lost among the crowds in a packed train, one hand gripping a strap above his head to stay upright. Another day, his figure hunched over a desk, typing endlessly under the dull glow of a computer screen. His meals had been instant and flavorless, his home quiet and lifeless. Compared to that gray existence, the present felt like a dream, almost unreal in its simplicity. Soon after, a boy appeared, a figure with cropped hair and an expression too mischievous for his own good. His name was Ted, a companion who carried chaos wherever he went. His sudden arrival broke the calm like a stone striking water. Ren's faint smile vanished. His entire posture expressed the silent protest of someone who longed to remain undisturbed. Yet, before he could retreat, Ted's yelling at Ren's house. Moments later, Ren's mother emerged, a woman of firm expression and domestic presence. Ted asking if Ren can play with the kids. After a brief pause of consideration, she raised both thumbs with a smile. The two boys made their way to the base camp, a modest cottage known among the villagers as the children's room. It served as a gathering place for those still too young to work, basically the daycare center. No sooner had Ren arrived than a small girl with a perpetually runny nose came barreling toward him. Her name was Tetra. Without hesitation, she leapt into his arms, clutching him with the force of unfiltered affection. Ren froze, caught between amusement and horror as traces of drool and snot began to mark his clothes. When Ren picked the girl up, oh boy, her runny nose and drool got everywhere. His shirt turned into a battlefield of mess. But that giggling face of hers was just too cute to stay mad at. How could anyone resist that smile? So, Ren sighed in defeat and forgave Tetra, even though his clothes now smelled like a swamp monster's towel. Ted, watching nearby, burst into laughter. Everyone knew it. Tetra adored Ren the most, though no one could quite explain why. When Ren gently told Tetra to go find her brother instead, she immediately pouted, then clung onto him again with an adorable grumbling sound, like an offended kitten trying to sound scary. Dot off to the side stood a boy, with jet black hair and a full-on emo aura, arms crossed, silently counting the children one by one to make sure everyone was present. To Ren, each kid's personality was written right on their face, all gathered in one noisy, chaotic little cottage. Ted was the liveliest among them, loud and endlessly mischievous. Chanos, in contrast, carried himself like a brooding shadow, treated every moment as a chance to act cool. Anne, with her oddly tied short hair and boundless energy, was the very definition of silly. Then there was Tetra, the youngest of them all, a baby with the face of an angel and the soul of a tiny tyrant. Kenya, the girl with twin braids, served as their self-appointed class president. Beside her was Turner, a quiet boy with short hair and an unshakable calmness. He has no eyesight. And then there was Ren. On the surface, he looked like an ordinary child. In truth, he was a middle-aged man, reincarnated into the body of a young boy without warning or explanation. Once an adult from another world, now he found himself trapped in a second childhood, surrounded by chaos. The experience was both surreal and humiliating. A grown man living among children, pretending to be one of them. Ren did his best to act his part, though his attempts were often clumsy. His expressions betrayed him, the tired sigh of a salaryman, the skeptical glance of someone who had paid bills and lost hair to stress. The other children would pause, puzzled by the strange maturity flickering across his face. To hide it, he forced himself to behave playfully, speaking and moving as a child should, though the performance always felt forced, awkward, and exhausting. Turner tugged at his shirt. The boy whispered that he wanted a story. Relieved to escape outdoor play, Ren agreed. The group naturally split into two, the restless ones charging outside to play with wooden swords, and the calmer ones staying behind at their little base camp. That day, however, Kenya insisted she wanted to study mathematics with him. Turner, stubborn as ever, refused to give up on his request. He yanked on Ren's shirt with the determination of a warrior declaring war, stretching the poor fabric until it looked ready to snap. Ren tried to stay calm, gently explaining to Kenya that maybe she could let Turner have his way just for today. He even pointed out his shirt, which was now hanging longer than a laundry line, because Ren knew this pattern all too well. Once Turner set his mind on something, there was no stopping him. His shirt wasn't just stretched anymore, it had transformed into a full-blown swing. That's when toddler Tetra spotted it. Her eyes sparkled with mischief, and before anyone could stop her, she plopped herself onto the dangling cloth and started rocking back and forth like it was her personal hammock. Resigned to his fate, Ren's shirt was hanging off him like some ancient Greek storyteller, half torn, half tragic. Still, he pressed on, spinning a Japanese folktale he vaguely remembered for the kids. Kenya listened with sparkling eyes, totally enchanted by the story's romantic twist. Meanwhile, Turner, the one who begged for a story in the first place, was already snoring halfway through it. Ren let out a long, dramatic sigh. Was there anyone in this village who could fix his poor, ruined clothes? Trying to wrap things up, he told Kenya it was time to call it a day and head home, since two kids were already out cold. But Kenya's face lit up instead. Apparently, that meant there was still time for a math lesson. Ren swore he could feel his soul leaving his body right then and there. By the time Ren finally escaped the swarm of kids, the sun was already dipping low. He trudged home, dragging his feet like a soldier returning from war. Halfway down the road, he spotted his teenage neighbor, Sia, drawing water from the old well. From the look of it, that bucket weighed about as much as her dignity was about to. Ren watched from a distance, already sensing disaster brewing. Sure enough, right on cue, Sia's foot caught on a rock. Time slowed, the bucket flew, and down she went in cinematic slow motion. Before she could kiss the dirt, Ren dashed forward, faster than a gust of wind, and caught her mid-fall like some off-brand Superman. He asked if Sia is okay, still holding her awkwardly. Sia blinked, startled. She hadn't even noticed he was nearby. But then, her expression shifted from surprise to confusion. They stared at each other for a few long, silent seconds. She couldn't help but think, why on earth is Ren's shirt completely destroyed? And why is he smiling like that? Then she gasped, realizing her precious water was now all over the ground. To Sia's utter surprise, not a drop of water had spilled from the bucket. Ren let out a nervous laugh, clearing his throat as he tried to explain. With a goofy face and child-friendly words, he said the bucket had spun in midair for a while, gradually slowing down until it just stayed put. And somehow, magically, the water was safe. Sia, wide-eyed and curious, simply nodded. Magic, huh? She hadn't thought miracles like that actually happened. Grinning at the thought, she picked up her bucket and waved goodbye, heading inside. As soon as she disappeared, Ren's face hardened into an oddly serious expression. He bent down to retrieve one of his shoes, muttering to himself in irritation. He'd let his powers get the better of him. Again. Controlling the wind, creating little tornadoes. It was all thrilling, but he couldn't let the villagers find out. Some secrets were too dangerous to share. Ren glanced back at the spot where he'd accelerated to catch Sia. The speed had left a decent-sized hole in the ground, and he quickly shoveled dirt over it until it was covered. Resuming his slow trudge home, he spotted his father returning from the garden. The older man greeted him warmly, and without hesitation, grabbed Ren's hand. For someone past middle age, the casual hand-holding felt oddly intimate, but Ren bit back any awkwardness. After all, he had to act like a kid. From behind, Ren noticed the broad, sturdy back of his father. A pang of guilt hit him. His father hadn't exactly gotten a normal child, but a reincarnator with far too many powers. Seeing Ren's glum expression, his father offered a small, knowing smile. Then, without warning, he scooped Ren up onto his shoulders. Ren froze, caught somewhere between mortified and bemused. Ren's father tilted his head, concern in his eyes, worried Ren might get bullied. Ren scoffed, letting out a nervous laugh. The thought of being older than his father, yet being carried on his shoulders like a child, made him smirk at the absurdity. But the feeling vanished as he caught sight of the evening sky. The sunset spilled gold and pink across the horizon, painting the village in a warm, tranquil glow. Ren loved this place, the kind villagers, his mother who was strict but caring, the quiet harmony of their little family. He wanted it to last forever. To protect that happiness, he'd have to keep his powers a secret, stay hidden as a reincarnator, and endure the weight of magic alone. But trouble was brewing. While Ren slept soundly between his parents that night, a shadow stirred in the forest. A monster, patient and waiting, threatening to shatter the peace of their idyllic village. The next morning, Ren was spacing out again, leaning against a tree, staring blankly at the sky until someone started calling his name. Ren peeked out from behind the trunk, eyes wide with panic. It was Ted. He was looking for him everywhere, behind bushes, near the well, even climbing trees like a man possessed. But no sign of Ren. The more Ted searched, the more frustrated he got, because Ren was hiding on purpose. Actually, he was planning to escape this so-called hide-and-seek game entirely. The kids around here were freaks of nature. How did they have that much energy all the time? The others, of course, were having the time of their lives laughing at poor Ted, who couldn't find Ren no matter what. Eventually, they turned it into a full-on competition. Whoever finds Ren first wins. Great. Just what he needed, an entire army of sugar-fueled gremlins hunting him down. Ren sighed. If he stayed put any longer, someone was bound to find him, drag him back to their base camp, and force him to keep playing. So, with a heavy heart and the determination of a fugitive, Ren decided to move somewhere else, toward the outer perimeter of the village. The wooden wall stood there, simple but sturdy, made from thick logs driven deep into the ground. It wasn't fancy, but it did the job, keeping monsters out and kids in. Beyond the wall lay the forest, just a few steps away. No one built houses near it. The villagers weren't that suicidal. Still, there was one person who didn't seem to care about how dangerous it was living so close to the woods. His name was Double, an old man, with a thick, rugged beard that seemed to have survived several winters on its own. Each day, he could be found in his yard, splitting stacks of firewood with a steady, unflinching rhythm. Among the villagers, Double was regarded as something close to a legend, the reliable sage of the village, one who stood apart from ordinary humans. Though he worked as a charcoal burner, that was not what made him extraordinary. What truly set him apart was the power he possessed. Double could wield magic. In that world, magic certainly existed, but to reach the level of a sage was a feat bordering on the impossible. Few were even born with the potential, and fewer still could master it. Ren had once learned of the stages required to reach such heights. The first was talent, found in only 1 out of 10 people. The next was learning rate, and among those gifted few, only 1 in 10 could progress further. Beyond that came skill level, a threshold so narrow that perhaps 1 in 1,000 could cross it. Magic was divided into 4 fundamental elements: fire, water, earth, and wind. There existed other rarer forms, such as crystal-based magic, but Ren's understanding of those remained limited. Double himself was a fire wizard. He could light his pipe, create flames, and turn wood into charcoal using only his magic. For someone of such rarity and strength to choose a quiet life in a small, remote village was a mystery in itself. Then, as though sensing the boy's gaze, Double paused and lifted his head. Their eyes met briefly. Ren caught in the act of watching, the sage calm and unreadable. From the open window of Double's house, the scent of freshly cooked food drifted into the air, rich and inviting. Ren caught the aroma and instantly faltered, unable to hide the look of longing on his face. Double, ever perceptive despite his stern expression, invited him to eat. Before long, a simple yet hearty meal, vegetable and meat soup, was served on the wooden table in the old man's yard. They ate beneath the mild sunlight, the quiet rhythm of their spoons blending with the rustle of leaves. Double, Ren thought, was a good person, though his appearance often suggested otherwise. His sharp eyes and solemn face gave him the look of someone constantly judging the world, which was probably why most children kept their distance. Ren, however, found comfort in that solitude. This was the one place no one would think to look for him. The first spoonful stunned him. The flavor burst across his tongue with unexpected warmth and depth. The vegetables, foreign and unrecognizable, melted delicately in his mouth. In his previous life, he had never cared for greens, yet here they were exquisite. Perhaps it was magic that made them taste so vibrant, or perhaps Double was simply that skilled. Just as Ren settled into the quiet pleasure of his meal, a shadow appeared beside him. Turner stood there silently, so suddenly that Ren almost hurled his bowl in surprise. Turner, unlike the others, showed no fear of Double. The boy held a wooden beam in his small hands, his expression unreadable, as if preparing for battle. Ren froze, unsure of what to expect. Without a word, Turner extended the beam toward him, not as a weapon, but as an offering. His eyes, steady and unblinking, spoke of a simple desire, a trade for food. Double gave a quiet sigh and gestured for him to sit. Soon, Turner was served a bowl of soup as well. Whatever game of hide-and-seek they had been playing was long forgotten. One bowl became 2, then 3, and finally 4. Turner ate with the single-minded focus of someone who had found paradise in a meal. Though Double remained silent, he was so pleased to see his cooking so thoroughly devoured. Not long after, a man's desperate shouting echoed from afar. Double rose to his feet at once. The man ran toward them, breathless and wide-eyed, calling the old sage's name in panic. Turner and Ren stood frozen, uncertain of what was happening, while Double instinctively stepped forward, placing himself between the children and the approaching figure. His expression hardened, shadows deepening across his stern face. He ordered the boys to return home immediately, his tone leaving no room for argument. The weight in his voice told Ren enough. Something serious, something dangerous was drawing near. Reluctantly, Ren and Turner made their way back to the children's base camp, but when they arrived, the scene was different from usual. The place was crowded. Every child in the village seemed to have been gathered there, even faces Ren had never seen before. The air buzzed with restless curiosity. Ted, of course, was the most excited of them all. Whispers spread quickly. The adults were holding an emergency meeting. The children had been told to stay inside the cottage, isolated from whatever was happening outside. Ren couldn't shake the thought that this had something to do with Double's sudden change of expression. He tried to talk to Turner about it, but the boy seemed entirely uninterested, more concerned with his now empty stomach. Meanwhile, Ted and Chanos were already scheming. They announced their brilliant idea, to sneak out and eavesdrop on the adults' discussion. Kenya immediately leapt in front of them, blocking the way with both arms. Her scolding rang sharp through the room as she warned them not to be reckless. But Ted and Chanos had already made up their minds. Ignoring her protests, they darted toward the window, swung a leg over the sill, and leapt out. Kenya's angry shouts followed them, but the two boys only clapped their hands over their ears and kept running. Moments later, Ted and Chanos came rushing back, both pale and out of breath. Ted was the first to speak, his voice trembling as he blurted out the news. The adults were talking about a wolf monster. It had been spotted deep in the forest, and from the sound of it, there wasn't just one, there were several. The room grew tense. None of the children made a sound. Ren had never seen a monster before, only heard stories from his father, terrifying tales told by firelight. Chanos, standing a little straighter than usual, cleared his throat with dramatic flair. With a serious face, he declared that they needed to unite their strength and defeat the monster themselves. Ren's expression froze, thinking, was this kid serious? Judging by the looks on the others' faces, he wasn't the only one thinking it. But Chanos wasn't about to back down. He crossed his arms, his voice dripping with self-importance as he continued. The adults, he said, were useless. They'd probably just call for help from city adventurers, wasting precious time. If they wanted results, they had to act now. The best strategy, according to him, was to strike first before the monsters could attack the village. His boldness earned a few uneasy glances and a lot of silence, but Chanos pressed on, turning to Enoch and Massey, the two oldest boys among them, both with a bit of hunting experience. Ren could only stare at him, half in disbelief. The idea of these kids, whose greatest accomplishment so far was catching rabbits and birds, taking on wolf monsters, sounded utterly ridiculous. Kenya quickly disagreed. Her voice rang sharp through the cottage as she shouted at Chanos, forbidding him from doing anything reckless. For all her bossy confidence, she was still a child. Her words cracked mid-yell, and before long, tears welled in her eyes. The thought of her friends getting hurt was too much for her to bear. The tension in the room grew heavy. Ren stepped forward to calm everyone down, reminding them that they didn't need to do anything dangerous. They had Double, the reliable village sage. Ted chimed in, trying to reason with Chanos as well, his tone softer but firm. After a long pause, the gloomy boy finally muttered a quiet agreement. Ren watched him carefully. Chanos sat there silently, eyes fixed on the floor. Something about that stillness felt wrong. Despite the boy's words, Ren couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. The next morning, Chanos had already gathered Enoch, Messi, Ted, and Anne for a self-declared monster hunt. Though the others were visibly uneasy about the plan, Chanos appeared utterly composed. He began demonstrating the agile sword techniques he had practiced countless times on his own, moving with exaggerated precision. His eyes gleamed with determination as he announced that they were the only ones capable of protecting the village. His declaration, however, was met with silence. Unwilling to let the moment die, Chanos deliberately teased his companions, asking if they were simply afraid. The provocation struck a nerve. Ted, unable to accept the jab, swung his own wooden weapon furiously at the air. The display was absurd, yet oddly earnest, a proud attempt to prove his courage. Anne watched the spectacle in disbelief. Chanos, seemingly satisfied, turned to the two older boys. Enoch stood ready with a roughly carved wooden club, while Messi carried a bow with only a few arrows left in his quiver. Both smiled with forced bravado before the group set off toward the forest, their steps filled with naive purpose. Elsewhere, Ren arrived at Chanos' family shop, which was currently being looked after by Sia. When asked where Chanos had gone, Sia replied that he had likely gone out to play with Ted. The answer made Ren's stomach tighten. A deep unease settled over him. Without a word, he left the shop, rubbing his face in frustration. When he heard that Enoch and Messi had also joined, his suspicions hardened into dread. The thought came immediately. Those reckless children must have gone to the forest. Ren broke into a run, heading straight for the village gate. There should have been guards stationed there to prevent anyone from leaving, yet he knew the group well enough to imagine them climbing the walls instead. Swearing under his breath, he searched along the perimeter, scanning every possible escape route. Something had felt wrong that morning, ever since Ted had failed to show up to bother him as usual. Now, as he ran with growing urgency, Ren could only hope the children were still somewhere within the village walls. When Ren finally reached the village gate, he found only Anne standing there, sulking by herself. His breath was already half gone from running, and the sight of the girl did nothing to ease his frustration. Without wasting a second, he demanded to know where Chanos and the others had gone. Anne answered that she didn't know, but her face betrayed her immediately. Ren straightened up, his tone growing firm as he asked her again to tell the truth. Anne stubbornly repeated that she didn't know, avoiding his gaze. Finally, Ren warned her that if anything happened to the others, she would be blamed as well. The threat worked. With a sigh of defeat, Anne admitted that Chanos and his friends had climbed over the gate, apparently not too high, and fled toward the forest. They had hidden a wooden box among the bushes to use as a foothold for the climb. Ren thanked her for being honest and instructed her to alert the adults immediately, while he went after the group before anything worse could happen. Anne, perhaps feeling guilty, tried to help by dragging the box back into place, but Ren was already too panicked to think straight. He barked at her to hurry and run. Startled, Anne squeaked in fear and bolted toward the village, her short legs carrying her as fast as they could. Once Ren was sure Anne had run off, he turned his attention to the towering village gate. Dropping to his knees, he planted them firmly, adopting a wide, steady stance. He inhaled deeply, focusing every ounce of energy into his legs. Then, with a sudden burst of power, he launched himself upward, using the gate as a stepping point. He soared over the imposing structure effortlessly, moving like an Olympic athlete at the peak of performance. Mid-air, however, his eyes accidentally met Anne's. Too late to undo the moment, he grimaced at the silent witness to his acrobatics. Ren landed with a thud, heart pounding, not just from the jump, but from the realization that Anne had probably seen everything. He barely had time to dwell on that, something far more urgent. Footprints in the dirt caught his eye, clear signs of the mischief makers ahead. Without hesitation, he surged forward, sprinting with lightning speed. Deeper within the forest, Chanos and his companions continued their search. They had been wandering for some time, struggling to find even a trace of the monsters they'd set out to hunt. Then, suddenly, Enoch noticed something behind a thick clump of bushes. The moment he peeked through, his face drained of color. He stumbled backward with a terrified cry, landing hard on the ground. The others rushed over, only to freeze at the sight before them, a horse's carcass, mangled and torn in half. For a moment, silence fell over the group. Whatever had done this was far beyond anything they could fight. But Chanos, refusing to back down, insisted that they must not be afraid. Before he could finish convincing them, the nearby bushes suddenly rustled with violent force. Chanos and Ted, who stood closest, froze in terror, and in the next instant, Chanos collapsed, foaming at the mouth in sheer panic. Ted took command in a heartbeat, shouting for them to run. The two older boys grabbed Chanos by the arms, lifting him as best they could, and bolted through the undergrowth. Leaves and branches whipped against their faces as they fled. Elsewhere, Ren was running through the vast forest, panic rising with every step. In terrain like this, his ordinary speed would never be enough. He decided to push harder, channeling acceleration magic, not only through his legs, but throughout his entire body. His skin tingled as energy surged within him, lightening every movement. With a single powerful leap, he vaulted high above the trees. From that height, his enhanced vision sharpened. He could see every living presence scattered across the forest. Something in his vision caught his attention, a small figure surrounded by monstrous shapes. Adjusting his focus, he realized it wasn't Chanos and his friends at all. It was Turner, cornered and trembling. Facing down a pack of snarling wolf beasts, Ren screamed, calling out Turner's name in shock. Instant regret hit. Why on earth had he yelled? The wolf monster's eyes locked on Turner, and suddenly it lunged. Too far apart, there was no way Ren could reach him in time. Except Ren wasn't just any kid. Alone, he'd practiced magic obsessively. Catching bees without killing them was just a warm-up. Reflexes like lightning, vision so sharp it practically slowed time, senses dialed up to superhuman. And that was just the beginning. Physical enhancement was his secret weapon, a trick he'd spent months perfecting. Now, it all mattered. Distance was irrelevant. Ren's magic surged like he was cheating reality itself. Every movement slowed around him, the world stretching in cinematic slow motion. In a heartbeat, he closed the gap, his body a blur of enhanced speed and strength. Without a second thought, he struck, overwhelming the monster before it could touch Turner. When Turner's eyes finally opened, all he saw was blood, mostly on Ren's hands. The wolf's head had been crushed as easily as popping a melon. Adrenaline still roaring through him, Ren only relaxed when he heard his own name whispered. He drew a long, shaky breath, letting his racing heart finally slow. A thin smile curved Ren's lips, despite the blood splattered everywhere. Relief washed over him. Turner was safe. His hands trembled, drained from consuming so much magical energy, but his focus sharpened. He turned toward the remaining wolf monsters, silently promising to end this fight fast. Low, furious growls rumbled from them. Ren could feel their rage at their fallen comrade. But the boy wasn't intimidated. Gathering magic in his hands, he compressed the air into a tiny, dense vortex. Like some over-the-top ninja move, he prepared to finish the battle quickly. Then, in an instant, he unleashed it. A colossal tornado erupted from his hands, ripping through the monsters. Their bodies were shredded inside the spinning vortex, gone in a heartbeat. The tornado didn't stop. Birds scattered, shrieking in panic, while the monsters' pitiful wails faded into silence. Ren froze, staring at the aftermath. He had never unleashed wind magic like this before. It was brutal, grotesque, horrifying, an absolute force of nature. The ground bore scars, cratered and torn. As the tornado dissipated, shredded wolf bodies melted into a torrential rain of blood. They was instantly soaked, drenched from head to toe in the aftermath of the slaughter. Instinct took over. He grabbed Turner's hand and dragged him away from the scene, moving fast through the forest. Every step stoked a storm of anxiety in Ren's chest. He had lost control, pushed his powers to the extreme. What if someone discovered the truth about him? The thought gnawed at him relentlessly. Questions about Chanos and the others pressed on his mind. Why had Turner even been there? How much had he seen? Turner remained silent, strangely composed, his mere presence forcing Ren to pause and take in the calm amidst chaos. The truth, Chanos and the others had already returned to the village. Turner had tracked them, disguising himself as a wolf to frighten the group and prevent them from pursuing the monsters. The revelation struck Ren like a thunderclap. The quiet, reserved boy had executed a daring plan, acting with courage beyond his years. But Ren's relief was intertwined with fury. The recklessness, the lack of communication with the adults, luck had preserved them this time, but next time might not be so forgiving. He slammed his hand against a tree. If he had been even a moment late, Turner would not have survived. Turner suddenly burst into uncontrollable sobs, apologizing over and over. Ren panicked. He hadn't meant to snap like some overgrown adult, and scrambled to comfort him. At the same time, he desperately tried to steer the moment towards something practical, washing the blood off their clothes before anyone else saw. But Turner refused to move, still buried in sadness and stubbornly rejecting the idea of a bath. Ren, however, wouldn't give up. He grabbed at Turner's shirt, tugging insistently, trying to peel it off. Why was this kid so embarrassed? They were both boys, weren't they? But then, something clicked, and Turner bolted. Cheeks burning, he confessed, voice barely audible, that he wasn't actually a boy. Ren stood frozen. His face felt like it had aged 30 years in a single second. All this time he had been wrong? Should he now call her Turner-chan, who had always been one of the guys, was actually a girl? Ren felt utterly trapped, caught in the most unexpected plot twist of his life.